And good morning, everyone. So excited to be here with you today and to talk a little bit about feedback and how we can use feedback and some science behind feedback to help us boost motivation and success. So, a little bit about me. I am based out of a small town in Texas. It's called Orange, Texas. Whoops, my slides jumped ahead there. And Orange, Texas is in southeast Texas. It's east of Houston, right on the Texas and Louisiana border. And my company is called Engineer Inclusion. And I come to this work from a little bit of a unique pathway. I am an engineer and computer scientist trained first, worked in industry for Texas Instruments, and then over a decade ago, I switched from widgets to workshops and really never looked back. I've been focused on figuring out how do we intentionally engineer equitable and inclusive learning environments so that all people can succeed. How do we engineer equitable and inclusive work environments so that people can reach their fullest potential? And so I get to do this for a living, and it's been a really great joy for me to do this work. I prepared for you all today some handouts, and so I will continue to drop this link in the chat for you. It's a pretty comprehensive PDF that's going to cover a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. If you're somebody who likes to take notes, you can use it to take notes. And it's going to have some of the resources, tools, and worksheets that I'll be sharing today. And so I hope that you'll access that because you don't want to miss all of those valuable resources that I'm going to share. So to get us started, I want to kind of promote some of the guiding questions that are going to guide my talk for today. So we're going to talk about what are some of the sources of motivation. We're going to talk about how and to what degree does motivation affect learning? And then how do we give feedback that boosts motivation? And so the sort of framing way that we're going to talk about this work today is that first we recognize from what the research tells us is that motivation is the first step in learning. And self-efficacy is the root of motivation, and it predicts outcomes. And then sticky feedback, which is this formula that I'm going to give you today, it cultivates self-efficacy. And so you will be able to provide self-efficacy boosting feedback at the end of our talk today. Now, one of the tools that I'm going to be using in our conversation is a tool called Slido. If you've never used Slido before, that's okay. Slido is a tool that you can access using your smartphone. So you can open up your camera, hover the camera over the QR code, and then that will open up that. The same QR code is what we'll be using throughout the whole time that we have together. And so when you see that, I've just got some opportunities for us to engage and to talk and learn together with one another. Now, the backbone of the talk here, I've got three key things that we're going to talk about. So this is sort of our agenda. We're going to talk first about the inborn motivation system. That means the motivation system that we are born with that's part of our brains. The second thing that we're going to talk about is the theory of self-efficacy and then the theory of mindset and how all of these work together to create a really cool formula for us to use in giving feedback that helps people meet their goals and their success. So to get us started, I want you to think about something that you've learned to do as an adult and that you've now mastered. So think about your learning process as you go through that. So something that you've learned to do as an adult and that now you've mastered. Maybe you learned how to smoke meats. You've learned how to do dishes. Okay, I need some notes on that because I got a pile of dishes in my kitchen. Maybe you've learned how to lift weights. So here's a background tip of me. I was a competitive power lifter for 18 years. So lifting weights is something that I learned as a kid and continued into my adulthood. Somebody learned how to snowboard. Somebody learned how to cook. Somebody is a pro at napping. I think we're going to need some notes on that. Eating healthy, playing guitar, learning how to take care of a baby, right? Like that's something you're definitely learning and doesn't come with, a great, guidebook. Lots of skiers here, it looks like. As a Texan who grew up on flat coast, skiing is not something that I learned very early in life and never learned to love. Oh, somebody knows how to use Excel and pivot tables. For one of my clients right now, that's what I'm teaching people how to do and to look at data. Pottery, parenting, driving. All right, so you all have learned lots of things. Now, I want you to keep a note of that because we're going to come back to it, but that's going to help us think about the context for what we're talking about. Somebody learned how to paint, learning a new language. So lots of great things that you all are learning. So thank you so much for contributing to that. Oh, keeping plants alive, sort of. I love it. So we're going to talk now about the natural human learning process. And so Dr. Rita Smilkstein has done some pretty extensive work connecting the science of brain plasticity and to learning in the classroom and any kind of environment. So it looks like we have a request to make this the screen full screen. Is it possible to highlight my face so that people can see what I'm showing?
I'm going to work on getting the interpreters pinned to the top and your layout primary. It's been a little bit of a challenge here in WebEx.
Okay. And if people continue to have problems seeing, let me know, and then I can switch from the software I'm using to just do like a pretty standard screen share. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate it. So we're going to be talking about, again, this natural human learning process, and there are 6 stages of this. And this learning process, it helps us really understand how we all move through the process of learning anything. And as you can see, it starts with motivation. And so this sort of beginning motivation, it's this place of beginning saying like, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to try, right? I don't know how to do something, but you're going to try. You've got that initial motivation to tackle and to dive into something. The next part of the natural human learning process is beginning practice. And so at this stage, you're starting to do some practice. You're recognizing that you're starting to understand how something is working. The next stage is advanced practice. So again, lots and lots of practice here. So here at advanced practice, the more you practice, the more you improve. So connecting back to the person who added weightlifting. So when you think about, how you began to, when you started lifting weights, I think about when I started lifting weights as like a freshman in high school. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew nothing about it. And I started practicing. And I wasn't particularly skilled at the sort of, form that is really needed to lift really heavy weights, right? And so I went from a freshman, having never lifted weights, to show up at a meet and just see how much can I lift. And then I realized, wow, well, maybe if I practice, I can get better. And then the more and more that I practiced over the next year, the more and more that I improved, right? And that then came to this space of skillfulness, where you have the basics down and you're learning to try new ways. And so again, you're starting to kind of hone in on this next stage of refinement. And refinement is where you're really able to start to see what's better or worse than what you tried before. I can remember at one point when I was lifting in college, and I pulled out the algebra and the calculus, and I was running angles of trying to figure out my foot placement and the heel height of my shoes, and trying to optimize my squat the best I could so that I could lift more weight, right? That is definitely not something a beginner does, right? This is absolute refinement to the highest degree. And then the next and final phase is that of mastery, of when you're an expert. And so at this point, you've really got it and you can do it lots of different ways. Now, for me as a lifter, I think about, so I competed for over 18 years. I also broke my back as a result of that. And I don't squat anymore, but sometimes before my final back surgery, I could go into the gym and having not squatted for a long time and get under the bar, and I could still do the lift in the exact same form and function that I had trained for years and years and years, right? At that point, it was a true sort of muscle memory. Now, to connect this to some of the brain science, I want us to watch this little video really quick here to help us understand how the brain works. So actually, I'm betting it's not going to show audio on that one.
What's
Can you
going
hear
on in
it?
the brain when you learn?
Okay.
In order to learn anything, whether it's math, a foreign language, guitar, or how to dribble a basketball, you need to create and strengthen pathways in your brain. Think about shooting a free throw. Know that feeling when you've got it down and don't even have to think about it? That's muscle memory. Here's the thing. Muscle memory lives in the brain, not the muscles. Your brain controls everything your muscles do, and it does this by activating specific neural pathways for each and every movement. These are functional pathways, neurons working together to achieve a goal. Say you're learning how to shoot a free throw. If it's your first time doing it, you don't yet have a pathway for that movement in your brain. You need to create it. Let's use an analogy to look at what's happening in the brain during this time. When you're first learning, your brain is like a forest full of trees and dense foliage, with no clear pathway between point A and point B. As you learn the mechanics of shooting a free throw, you create a trail through the forest. Now you can shoot the free throw because you've created that pathway in your brain, but you probably don't make many shots because it's so new. The pathway isn't very clear yet. In order to improve your free throw, you need to refine and strengthen the free throw pathway in your brain. The way you do that is through practice. Practice gradually widens the trail through the trees, turning it into a dirt road between A and B. You're starting to get pretty good now. You're making more free throws than not. You don't have to think about the mechanics as much. That's because the pathway gets stronger after each practice rep, and you've done a lot of reps. With even more practice, the dirt road turns into a paved road connecting A and B, allowing information to be transmitted at a faster rate. Now you're a 70% free throw shooter, and when you step up to the line, you don't even have to think about it. Eventually, with enough practice, what started as a trail has become a full-blown highway. Now you're a master, draining almost every free throw, and the movement is completely second nature. Scientists call this plasticity, and it's your brain's innate ability to create and strengthen connections between neurons. These connections are the path through the forest.
All right, so that gives us a little bit of example of understanding what's happening in the brain when we're learning a new skill. And how we know this happens is that we have some science that tells us so. And so in our brains, the function of neurons are constantly fluctuating as we engage in different tasks. From simple tasks like grabbing your cup of coffee to complex tasks like understanding systemic oppression or neuroscience, right? And so the functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, so the fMRI, it is a technique for measuring and mapping the brain activity. And this was invented in like the early 90s, and this has allowed us to have a deeper understanding of the brain. And so let's talk a little bit about brain plasticity. And so brain plasticity, this is recognizing that with effort, our brain can change. Now, when I say grow, I'm using like growth quotes here. We're not growing tumors, right? We're growing connections in our brain. And so our brains have about 10 billion neurons, and each of them have growth potential. And so when we think about how do we learn something, we're trying to connect neurons in our brain. And so when we think a thought, our brain is sending and receiving electrical signals through neurons in the brains. Dendrites then receive the information and the axon sends it. And so the more dendrites, those are the little things on the outside, the more dendrites a neuron has, the more connections that it can make. And so every neuron in your brain is connected to over 10,000 other neurons, making up trillions of connections. And so these connections, that's what allows your clients to think and to do many other things. And so as the brain faces a new task or thinks a new thought, a new connection is made. So if this task is thought or only done once, the connection's weak and it will not be remembered or strengthened. So several of you put on the chat that you had learned a new language, right? As you're learning a new language, those connections, those neural pathways in your brain are weak. And so I don't know about you, but I have learned and forgotten Spanish at least 3 times, right? And it's because those neurons start floating away. They're losing those connections. But when you start using it on a more regular basis, all those neurons start connecting again, and you have greater, deeper connections. That's that highway like in the video. And so brain plasticity, it refers to this idea that neurons and networks in our brain can grow and develop as the brain thinks new thoughts and repeats them, or as we try new things and repeat them. And so for many of the clients that we're working with, their brains, our brains, all of us, our brains have been wired as a function of our lived experiences. They have been wired by trauma. They have been wired by oppression. They have been wired by lots of different things. And so sometimes when we're trying to motivate and encourage people to create some kind of change in their life, we're actually trying to rewire the neural connections in our brain to develop new habits and processes. And so the human beings, we are not only born with this inborn impulsion and compulsion to learn, we also have an inborn motivation system that rewards us with a feeling of pleasure when we do so. And so what this means is the brain produces the so-called pleasure chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. And that's happening when we are learning. And so when we're learning, our body is rewarding us. So if someone seems disinterested or uninterested in learning, that person is not feeling or behaving naturally. So something has to have happened to sabotage their brain's innate learning and motivation for learning systems. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So again, if someone seems uninterested in learning, they're not behaving naturally. So something has sabotaged their innate learning and motivation for learning systems. So let me turn this question back to you. I want you to think about, for the clients that you serve, what kinds of things, people, or events could sabotage a person's innate learning and motivation for learning systems? What kinds of things, people, or events could sabotage a person's innate learning and motivation for learning systems? Failure, right? Addiction, substances, trauma. What else? So lots of votes here for trauma. Punishment. We've got some additional notes in the chat here. Brain injuries, homelessness, people who are unhoused, death, the death of people that they love, depression, lack of healthy attachments, neglect, abuse, rejection, negative feedback from parents that they're never good enough, PTSD, dysfunctional upbringings, chemical imbalances. In the chat, we've got inability to read, or low self-esteem. And self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. It's your self-worth. Lack of support. Let's see, what else has been past failures, depression, health issues. So there are so many different kinds of things that can contribute to sabotaging our potential, right? And so what we're going to look at now is we are going to look at what affects learning. And so thank you all for your contributions there. So the research tells us that there are some very distinct things that happen that affect the ways that we learn. And through no fault of their own, these factors impact some people more so than others. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is scarcity. So the cost of many types of scarcity in life, like basic needs, money, health, respect, safety, choices, belonging, esteem, affirmation. So that's sort of all kinds of scarcity. But the cost of that is a seriously reduced mental bandwidth. So, I think we've all experienced this where we're trying to do some work at home, but we aren't able to do any work because our internet bandwidth is limited, right? So you have a set amount of bandwidth that you either pay for or that is allowed, through the pole in your neighborhood. Well, our brains function in really similar ways. Our brains have a set amount of bandwidth potential, and all of these different kinds of things jam our bandwidth. So if I'm trying to accomplish a task, but I am so worried about money, whether I'm going to be able to pay my bills. I'm worried about my health. I'm worried that my dog is sick. I'm worried that I don't feel safe. If all of these things are jamming my mental bandwidth, it reduces the actual capacity for me to learn or to make any change. So the next one is stress. And so stress is the brain's response to any kind of demand. And so while all stress triggers physiological reactions, chronic stress is specifically problematic because of the significant harm to the body and to the brain's functioning. And so all of us experience stress. And again, not all stress is bad, but this chronic stress, that is what is really harming our body and our brain's functioning. So next is the environment. So the culture and climate of a community can affect someone's capacity to learn, someone's capacity to change, someone's capacity to reach their goals. And this is more so for marginalized and minoritized individuals. So in addition to thinking about the culture and climate of whether someone feels safe in their community, of whether, whoever they're surrounded with, those networks, in addition to those sort of big culture and climate things, there are also physical elements that, like noise, room temperature, work area, that can be distractions. The next are emotions. So emotions produce chemicals that enter the brain and physiologically affect the synapses and the brain's ability to think, to learn, to remember. So all of us can think about times when our brain is flooded with emotions and we just can't focus at work. We can't focus on growing. We can't focus on learning because our brain is just flooded by all of the things that we're feeling. However, when we feel respected and safe, we learn better. And so this is really important for us as helping professionals and making sure that when we interact with people who are dealing with lots of these things, that we make sure that they feel respected and safe and valued so that we don't contribute to the emotions that reduce their capacity to learn. So next is motivation. And so motivation is certainly complicated because people are motivated by different rewards. However, as I mentioned, when a person is learning successfully, an effective inborn motivation system is activated in the brain, producing pleasure chemicals, those serotonins, dopamines, and endorphins. And so if something sabotages our brain's innate learning and motivation for learning systems, such as any of the factors listed, motivation, interest, and satisfaction are affected. So another source of motivation that we're talking about today is self-efficacy. That's the belief that one has in their ability to accomplish a task. It answers that question, can I do this? And so we'll talk about those 4 sources and how we can apply that to our work. So the next is practice. So to begin to learn something, we need to fire up our neurons with our prior knowledge to grow more dendritic connections. So if your brain doesn't have something to connect to and to build on, it's harder to learn. So the model that we're going to learn for feedback helps you get the neurons and the dendrites firing in the clients that you're working with so that their brains can connect to that so they have a greater potential to learn. Next is quality and consistent practice lead to learning and skill development. I like the quote by Vince Lombardi, practice does not make perfect, only perfect practice makes perfect. And so that consistent practice of trying to consistently model the skills that you want is really important. The next are role models. So role models are so important. To help us learn, we benefit from seeing others perform or model how to do a task. Next is just general aptitude, right? So sometimes we have a better aptitude for a task than others, which affects how long it takes to learn something. So either way, we must allow ourselves time and patience to learn new things. So all of us have different capacity and aptitude to learn. And so what might take me a minute to learn might take you 5 minutes. What might take you 10 minutes might take me 10 years, right? And so finally, excellent instruction from unbiased service providers who are trying to teach equitably also goes a long way towards helping people learn. So now my question, I'm going to throw it back to you, is I want you to think about what motivated you to begin and to continue learning the new skill that you shared before. So there are 4 options here, so you can drag and drop to rank. So what motivated you to begin and to continue learning the new skill that you thought about before? So first vote up is role models. You saw someone else doing it. Okay, now we've got interest and passion taking the lead here. So you were really interested in or passionate about the topic, and that feeling motivated you to learn. Yeah, so right now I am learning how to use a pellet grill smoker, right? I'm deeply interested and passionate about this. I successfully broke my ridiculously silly grill on like day 2. So I need some better role models, it looks like, right? So we've got people who are interested in passion. So you're interested in the work, you saw someone else doing it. So for me, I saw my aunt and uncle doing it. So I thought if they could do it, maybe I can do it too. Feedback from others saying, hey, you're good at this. Maybe you can try this, right? So you can see that there are different kinds of things that motivate us. Now, I'm going to connect these to the theory of self-efficacy because each of these 4 are the sources of self-efficacy, all right? So again, all of this is in your handout. I definitely encourage you to access that. If you're still having trouble seeing my screen, you can also click on the dots to sort of move me to the stage. And then I'm going to drop also back in the link in the chat to download the handouts. So now we're going to talk about self-efficacy. We've kind of talked about the inborn motivation system, understanding the brain, and now what does that mean for us in self-efficacy? So self-efficacy is a learning theory that was first established by Albert Bandura in the late 80s. It is one of the most long-withstanding and well-cited across multiple genres theories of understanding how people learn. And so this is that belief in oneself that you can accomplish a task. And it's always task-based. It could be a big task, a small task, a complex task, or a simple task, but it's always task-based. It answers the question, can I do this? It answers the question, can I do this? And what's important to note about self-efficacy is it predicts achievement, whereas high self-esteem does not. So let me repeat that. Self-efficacy predicts achievement, whereas high self-esteem does not. So self-esteem is like, how do I feel about myself? What's my sort of self-worth? I cannot like myself, but have high self-efficacy that I can accomplish a task, and that predicts the outcomes rather than my self-esteem. So let's look at what are the benefits of high self-efficacy. So a person with a high self-efficacy, they have greater interest, achievement, motivation, engagement, persistence, performance. When we're talking about some of the changes that we want for our clients in problem-solving court, these are things that we want, right? We want them to achieve their goals. We want them to be interested and motivated. We want them to be engaged in the process. And most importantly, we want them to persist in spite of challenges that they're facing. Now, a person with a low self-efficacy, they are more likely to doubt, fear, and avoid a task. So a person with a low self-efficacy is more likely to doubt, fear, and avoid tasks. Now, we can always think about the good old little engine that could, right? So the little engine that could, what did the engine say? I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, when it came to going up over the mountain. That little engine that could had a high self-efficacy. So how do we develop self-efficacy like the little engine that could? There are 4 sources, and you all ranked these in the question that I had just a second ago. So the first is mastery experiences. So those are previous experiences and performance. The second, and we're going to go deeper into each of these. The second is vicarious experience. This is the observation of models. So it's seeing other people do it, or model an activity. The third is social persuasion. Social persuasion is feedback and support from others. And then the fourth, it looks like I've skipped a hit here. Okay, so let's try mastery first. So let's look at mastery. I want you to share an example of a mastery experience using this formula. I did task, therefore I think I can do more challenging task. I ran a 5K, therefore I think I can run a 10K. I got my master's, therefore I think I can get my PhD. I learned how to cook pizza dough, therefore I think I can learn how to do sourdough bread. I learned how to, raise one kid. I thought I could raise two kids. So think about for a second, and this is important for you. So if we can't identify self-efficacy in ourselves, then it's unlikely that we're going to be able to identify it in our clients. So a green ski run, therefore I think I can do a blue run. All right. I learned how to can pickles, so I think I can learn how to pressure can beans. Yeah, you have it. I learned how to knit, so I think I can learn how to weave. I made my bed, therefore I think I can clean the whole room. I lost weight before, I know I can do it again. I learned how to do my own hair, so I think I can do someone else's. I learned how to take care of dogs, and I feel like I can raise a child. Hey, listen, the same way, my dog is 15, and I'm in the process of adopting right now, because I thought, okay, well, I kept her alive, so maybe I can keep a human alive too, right? I did a discovery dive, so I think I can get certified in scuba. As a scuba diver, I highly recommend that you do that. I survived trauma, so I can learn to thrive. That's beautiful. I love that. So you've got it, right? So now let's talk about what is a vicarious experience. So a vicarious experience is a formula like this. Someone said I could do task, therefore I think I could do task. Or I'm sorry, someone could do task, therefore I think I can do task. My aunt got a PhD, therefore I think I can get a PhD. My uncle can grill with the Rectech smoker. I can't grill with a Rectech smoker. My friend who's a business owner could buy a house, therefore I think I can buy a house. So think of an example here. Someone could do tasks, therefore my mom raised 4 children, therefore I think I can be a mom too. Yes. Someone could do tasks, therefore I think I can do tasks. I watch my music teacher perform, therefore I can also perform musically. My aunt owns her own agency, therefore I can open my own. Yeah. Someone could homestead, therefore I could live off the grid. My best friend went back to school, and so I could go back to school too. You got it. So my son hiked a 14er, so I think I can too. My sister-in-law can nurse a baby, therefore I can. So all of these things you're looking at role models, you're looking at examples of people who have done this, and you're learning it also. Now let's look at the next one of social persuasion. So social persuasion is someone said I could do task, therefore I think I can do task. My problem-solving treatment provider said I could overcome addiction, therefore I think I can overcome addiction. My teacher said I could become an engineer, therefore I think I can become an engineer. My uncle said I could become a business owner, therefore I think I can become a business owner. My grandpa said I could travel the world, therefore I think I could travel the world. So think about an example here of someone who said that you could do task and you believed it. My friend said I can cross-country ski 29K, therefore I can. Someone said I could finish grad school, therefore I felt I could finish it. Yes. Someone said I could pass my licensing exam, so I think I can too. My parents said I could be anything I wanted, so I became a probation officer. Someone said I could write, therefore I think I can write a book. So all of these things are examples of someone saying, I believe in you, and you believe them back, right? And so this is one of the key sources of self-efficacy. I'm going to give you a few minutes to contribute some more. Someone said I couldn't win a scholarship, therefore I will try to, and did it. My friend said I could get a job, therefore I think I can too. All right, well done. Now, the last source of self-efficacy, and by the way, all 4 sources of self-efficacy work together. The last source are physiological or emotional cues. So physiological cues are things like sweating, hives, like sort of butterflies in the stomach. And emotional cues are just that, emotions. If you haven't read Dr. Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, I highly recommend this. This is like a dictionary of emotions and the things that we feel. And so this is saying just because I'm experiencing hives doesn't mean I can't finish my dissertation. That one might be a true story. Just because I'm experiencing nervousness just doesn't mean I cannot be a public speaker. Just because I'm experiencing sadness doesn't mean I cannot overcome my addiction, right? And so again, we're trying to separate those physiological cues and those emotional feelings from our capacity to accomplish a task. Just because I've experienced grief doesn't mean I can't engage in self-care. Just because I'm experiencing anxiety doesn't mean I can't self-regulate. Just because I'm experiencing fatigue doesn't mean I can't finish this half marathon. Just because I'm experiencing anxiety doesn't mean I cannot address others in crisis. Yeah. Just because I'm experiencing anxiety doesn't mean I'm a bad therapist. Just because y'all have lots of anxiety. I hope y'all are doing some good self-care. I also suffer from anxiety, so you're in good company. All right, so you've got this. Now, we're going to connect these sources to the next function of mindset, and we're getting really close to the formula. So the next piece of this puzzle is understanding mindset. Now, mindset is a self-perception that people hold about themselves, which affects how they approach tasks. So in this case, we're answering that question, can I improve with effort? Can I improve with effort? Can I improve my capacity to ski with effort, right? And so Dr. Carol Dweck, she has two different, in her book, Mindset, The Psychology of Success. I highly recommend this book. In her work, she's outlined two different mindsets. A fixed mindset means that your intelligence, your ability, and your personality, this is a belief that these are static and that nothing can be done to change it. I am who I am. Whereas a growth mindset is a belief that your intelligence, ability, and personality can be developed and can change or improve with effort. I liked what Judge Boyd said here, in his introduction. It's this belief that people can change, this belief that communities can change. And, honestly, like, I am in the business of change. There's no way I could do this work if I didn't believe that people had the capacity to change, that we had the capacity to develop, that we had the capacity to do more, right? So we have to figure out in the way in which we give feedback and to ensure that we're giving feedback that supports and aligns with a growth mindset. So we want to help people understand that with effort, their intelligence, their ability, their personality, their situation can be developed and can change and improve with effort. All right, so now we're going to put it all together for a formula around feedback. But before I do that, I want you to reflect on and rate your ability to give feedback. So just do a little self-reflection. How well do you think you are doing at giving feedback to your clients? I'm going to give you a second. I'm waiting for this number at the top right to get up to a little bit, and then I'll click and it'll show us how everyone's falling on this continuum. So take a minute to reflect on your ability to give effective feedback. All right, we got about 38 people participating. We're up to 44. I'm going to click it here. So the average score is around 6.5. So 35% of you or so, a third of you, are rating yourself about a 7, right? And we got a pretty standard bell curve here. But we're all rated towards the positive, giving ourselves a higher effectiveness of giving feedback. All right, so now keep that in mind and let's see what we can learn about feedback. Now, my next question for you is, since we're all so good at giving feedback, my question is, what are the characteristics of effective feedback? So if you're good at giving feedback, what are some of the characteristics of effective feedback? What do you think? Good listening, encouragement. What else? You ask permission first. Yeah, I like that. Are you ready for some feedback? Clear communication, reflective, kind. You're giving specific examples. Compassionate. It's affirming. It's specific. It's direct. It's strength-based. Reflective. You're rephrasing using their words. Good. It's timely. Lots of excellent contributions here. It's collaborative. Especially for the work that you all are doing in problem-solving core, it works best if it's collaborative, right? That you're working with the other team members. It's clear, it's constructive, it's behaviorally specific, lots of votes for empathy here, honest, genuine. Good. All right. So now let's look at what the research tells us are the most effective feedback characteristics. So the most effective feedback characteristics are, number one, it's specific and informative, right? So feedback should contain very specific examples rather than generalizations. Now, we've all received feedback when somebody gives us like this just broad generic feedback and we're like, can you give me some examples? And they can't. And we're like, I still don't understand what your feedback is because I can't pinpoint it to really understand it. The next is that it needs to be timely and frequent, right? There's lots of research that shows that when we have, like annual reviews are not particularly effective because the best reviews, the best feedback is given all the way through. When I've worked with my employees, I think one of the greatest compliments I receive as a manager is that there are zero surprises on an annual review. That's a part of a system that I had to do that, right? Because we've given feedback and it's been frequent throughout the year so that when we get to having to document those things based on the organization's rules, they already know that, right? The next is that it needs to be based on initial steps. So instead of just jumping forward saying, hey, you need to do this big end goal, we're trying to give them feedback based on some of the things that we've noticed and the things that they're doing. And again, the tool that we're going to talk about today is going to help us with that. It needs to be growth minded. So we need to be able to help people see that with effort, they can improve. We want it to be prompting, not answering, right? So the best feedback is that we're asking them questions. Now, why that's valuable is that when we're prompting rather than answering, we're actually getting their neurons firing and we're connecting with something that's already in their brain. When we connect with something that's already in their brain, then they're building and connecting and making more neural connections rather than us just telling them. Because if we just tell them, then we're not drawing from something that's part of their experience. We always want to praise the process, not ability, right? We also want to make sure that we are implying confidence of the goal completion. People can see through us, right? If we're telling them, hey, we think you can accomplish this, but our tones suggest otherwise, that's going to affect the feedback that we give. Now, another key thing to recognize in how we give feedback is that our filters influence our feedback. Our filters influence our feedback, and our filters are a function of our lived experience. So the way that we see and understand the world, it influences how we interact with others, it influences how we make decisions, and how we interpret others' actions, and how we attribute others' actions. So to be equitable and inclusive leaders, educators, humans, problem-solving team members, we must understand how our identities bias our perceptions. So we are all complex people with multiple identities. We may identify ourselves by our familial roles, our professions, our hobbies, or our aspirations. But the truth is that the social and political context inform parts of who we are. Some identities are externally visible, some aren't as salient at times, and others are kept to ourselves. But who we are, including all of our identities, our lived experiences, our life exposure, those realities, the truths, the traumas, and the thoughts, they influence how we perceive everything in the world. And so all of these things become a lens, just like my glasses, they become a lens through which everything is filtered. And we must recognize the power of the personal lens, which is also known as our positionality. And so what is your lens? What is your positionality, right? And so positionality is the combination of all of these different kinds of things. So it could be a combination of our race, our gender, our socioeconomic status, how that has changed over time. So like if you were raised in one SES and then you've achieved a different SES, that's going to affect how you move through the world, your ability or your disability, your sexual orientation, the language, your citizenship, physical attributes, the trauma that you've had. There's so many different dimensions of our identity, and all of these things become our positionality. Again, that's that social and political context that creates our identity. And so there's a full resource linked from the packet that I provided to give you, that gives definitions and explanations of several of those primary social identities, and it scaffolds an exploration of your positionality. So I encourage you to do that, because why that's so important is it helps you understand what are the filters that influence your feedback. What are those filters that are influencing your feedback? And so again, I encourage you to do that exercise because it's going to help you better understand how you approach the work. Now, I want to tell you in a story of how we sort of come to the sticky feedback model. Now, when I was a little girl, speaking of socioeconomic status, I remember going to this grocery store. It was called the Budget Shopper here in Southeast Texas. And my mom would line us up when they had sales. And the sale would be like, okay, you get $5 to get, 20 cans of green beans. You get $5 to get 20 cans of green beans, so we could stock up on whatever the cheap stuff was. And all I remember thinking as a little kid is like, oh, I just want $1 so I can put it in this little silly machine at the end of the checkout. And so I could get some kind of trinket. I remember that there would be like bouncy balls or these like little slimy things, right? And so, again, very rarely got the quarter to put in the machine there. But of the two options, I've been able to think about these two sort of kinds of ways that we give feedback. And there's bouncy ball feedback, and then there is sticky feedback. It looks like the little bouncy ball went away. So bouncy ball feedback, all that is this bottom one. It's just saying like the atta girl, the atta boy. It's not really useful feedback. Whereas sticky feedback is like the little slimy thing that you throw on the wall. So that would entertain me for hours. Whereas the bouncy ball feedback would get lost under the couch and like go away. And so when we're trying to give feedback, we want to give sticky feedback that's going to stick with someone and allow them to engage in the learning further. And so how we do that, and so what sticky feedback is, it's social persuasion plus mastery experience plus an acknowledgement of effort. So the formula here is social persuasion, that's feedback, plus mastery experience, that's previous experiences that suggest someone can do a task, plus an acknowledgement of effort. So let's practice this just a little bit. So which of the following is sticky feedback? So you can join the quiz on the platform. Which of the following is sticky feedback? You might not be able to do it yet, but with practice and time you will. Or, I can tell you worked hard. Or, you're making progress with the exercise. I'm proud you keep trying and don't give up. I'm confident you will get it soon with all of this practice. Which one of these is sticky feedback? It's 3 components, right? It's feedback plus mastery experiences plus an acknowledgement of effort. All right, so the answer is the last one. You're making progress with the exercise. I'm proud of you. Keep trying and don't give up. So let's try this again. Which of the following is sticky feedback? Your hard work is paying off. You were able to do a similar skill last month. With persistent practice, I'm certain that you'll learn this one as well. Those dendrites are building a powerful network in your brain around this skill. Keep up the practice. Now, sticky feedback's 3 components. It's feedback plus mastery experience plus an acknowledgement of effort. 6 more seconds. Tell us what you got. All right, time's up. So yes, it's the second one. You were able to learn a similar skill last month. So that's connecting to mastery experience. With persistent practice, so you're acknowledging effort. I'm certain you'll learn this one well. That's the social persuasion, acknowledgement, and belief in their ability. All right, one last one, and then we're going to apply this with a tool. So which of the following is sticky feedback? Because you solved that earlier problem, I know with effort you will solve the next one. What a challenge. See if you can figure this out. Or thank you for taking the risk and trying out a solution. See, like none of these sound bad, but which one is sticky? Mastery experience plus acknowledgement of effort plus the feedback of social persuasion. What do you think? All right, time's up. And the answer is yes, the first one. So because you solved that earlier problem, I know with effort you will solve the next one. Well done. All right, so the winners We've got several people that got 3 out of 3. So way to go, Jessica, Brooklyn, Jazz, and Elizabeth. You all got 3 out of 3. Well done. So now I want you to think about and create and share a sticky feedback statement. It doesn't matter what the context is, but something that's useful to your work is best. So make sure that you're not revealing anything about a client, of course, but like think about a statement, a sticky feedback statement that you could give to a client today. So remember, sticky feedback is feedback plus social persuasion, or social persuasion plus mastery experience plus acknowledgement of effort. Let's see some examples. Okay, we got 21 people typing. We're going to have lots of great examples. I know it. All right, so remember, the sticky feedback has 3 components. You can find those components in your packet. So it's the social persuasion plus mastery experiences plus acknowledgement of effort. So that's the sticky feedback. So we want a statement that you could give to a client that includes those 3 things. Connection to a previous mastery experience. You've accomplished step 1. I know you can complete step 2. Great. You've gained 1 month of sobriety. It's difficult and you're doing great. Keep going. Yes. You've really made improvements with showing up on time. I can tell you're really making an effort and it's paying off. Excellent. Because you submitted those 3 clean UAs, I know you can submit 30 full days of clean UAs. I know it's not easy, but you've got this. Yeah, so making sure we're talking about effort, we're acknowledging something they've accomplished. We're trying to anchor something in a mastery experience. Let me see. Can I share? People are still saying they're having a hard time seeing.
So each attendee should be able to go into the layout section. So that's the top right of their screen and choose what layout they want to see. They should also be able to right click on your video.
Okay.
And that will allow them to pin you to their stage or move you to their stage, and then they can pin you to their stage so you don't go away. On our side, I can't lock and sync my stage for everybody so that your presentation is large because I have to keep the interpreters locked to the top, and in WebEx we can't do both at the same time.
So now that I've put my screen up like that way, does that help? I'm trying to find where the chat go. Hopefully that's helping. Now I lost the chat. Okay, that worked. You can see it. Okay. All right. So thanks so much for your help, Leah. So let me revisit some of these examples. And Leah, you can give me an update on time. If
You bet. It's 10:25 and I can keep an eye on the chat for you.
Okay, great. All right. So you're attending all of your treatment. You've been taking your UAs and you're having a hard time getting a job. However, I know you're putting in applications and have an appointment with the Workforce Center. I'm hopeful that you will land a job soon. You overcame your cravings by using breathing techniques, talking to supports, and accomplished maintaining sobriety. Great job. And I know you will continue to be successful with sobriety. Yeah, so you all are really getting this. So we want that sticky feedback because that sticky feedback is what? It's connecting to those neural networks in their brain and it's connecting to those inborn motivation systems. So let's apply a tool now and these are great examples, and I'll download these and share these with Leah so that you all have a resource of some good examples. So what I want us to do now is we're going to turn to page 10 in our packet. And so in page 10 in our packet is a tool for how to plan your feedback. Now, so there are 4 key elements for planning our feedback. And again, this is all based on the literature and the research of what makes good feedback. And so first is we want to establish our purpose. What's our objective? What are our desired outcomes? And what are the specific and recent facts that are going to help me in providing the feedback that I need to give? The second is to analyze our filter. So to analyze our filter means we need to reflect on our positionality. We're going to value multiple ways of knowing and doing. And what that means is to value multiple ways of knowing and doing means that we're not just prioritizing how we would do something, right? And so a lot of times if we are from a dominant way of knowing and doing in this country, which tends to be sort of like competitive, individualistic, and however we learned how to do it, there could be value in other ways of knowing and doing and how to approach problems. And so we want to make sure that we are open to all of those options. Number 6 is that we employ an asset or a strengths-based perspective. And some of you mentioned this in the previous open Slido, is that to employ an asset or a strengths-based perspective means that we're looking at what are the values that this person is bringing. What are the skills that they're bringing? How do we see what someone is bringing as a value add rather than a deficit mindset? So this means that we're really challenging the status quo and we're thinking about what is it this person is doing or bringing that I can find some value in, rather than saying, hey, that's not the best way to do it. That's not how we do it. And again, we could have a whole lesson on this in and of itself. So the next part of analyzing our filter is to minimize our power dynamics. And that can be really hard in a system that is set up with lots of hierarchy, right? But to minimize power dynamics means that we aren't in a position where we are lording our power over someone. How do we reduce the ways in which those hierarchies show up? Because that's going to affect the climate for inclusivity. And so assess the climate for inclusivity is the last one. And then the next key parts are, sorry, this file is kind of slow here, is to crafting the feedback. Now, we want it to be specific and actionable based on initial steps, growth-minded, praising the process and effort, not an ability, and figuring out how do we imply our confidence of goal completion, and then prepare our approach, confirm readiness of the receiver. Because, sometimes if somebody has been battered and bruised one day by life, they are not ready to receive feedback. If their bandwidth is so jammed with other things that they aren't going to be able to receive that. So we want to make sure that they're in a space to receive that. Next, timely and frequent, and again, all of these things that we've mapped out before. So use this tool to help you plan your feedback, keeping equity and inclusion in mind. So some specific strategies for boosting self-efficacy and mindset. We're going to talk about these, but we're going to connect them back to another resource that's at the end of your packet that I hope that this is a framework that you'll be able to use. So most importantly, I firmly believe that we can teach people self-efficacy and teach them the sources, and then they can use this as a tool to boost their own success. And so if you jump down towards the end of the packet, there's this framework for problem solving, court, client accountability, and feedback. This is a worksheet that brings together all of the things that we've shared. And my goal and my idea for this is that this is a tool that you help your clients work through. And for you as a problem-solving team, you are all going to be using this as a sort of platform to help you give that sticky feedback that is going to help motivate them to succeed. And so they're going to start this worksheet with identifying what their goal is. And then they walk through mastery experiences. There are some questions for them to complete. They also have the formulas on there. Let's see, when I'm sharing my screen like this, it makes it really kind of slow. I'm so sorry, y'all. The next page, it talks about the vicarious experiences. It's helping them to map out those sources of their own self-efficacy, where they're looking at their vicarious experiences and trying to identify people who they can look up to. And then on the final page are the social persuasion. So they're trying to really identify their network of people that can provide support. And then the physiological cues. Now, the last couple of pages of this are just tables, simple tables. And what my idea is for you all as a problem-solving team is this is a tool that your clients are going to complete. and for you all to improve your communication and to make sure that you're all sort of anchored and starting from the same space, is that you can all complete this. And again, you can recreate this in whatever system that works for you, but this is a way to make sure that you're all giving feedback that's aligned to the mastery experiences that they're identifying. And so in the previous exercise where you all began to think about, some of the mastery experiences, you're acknowledging those, but we also want them to acknowledge them. And so if they can complete this tool, if they can begin to really think about how do they coach their own self to self-efficacy, and you all as a problem-solving team are using it to support each other, you've got broad communication across the different stakeholders who are working towards the same goals for the client, I believe that this is going to be a helpful tool that, again, it's drawing on neuroscience, it's drawing on motivation theory, and it's really helping to equip them with the tools they need and equip each of you as problem-solving providers to give them the tools that they need. So now I want to make sure that you have a look at that and you explore that. If that seems like it's a little bit too big of a start, we can simplify this into 5 key strategies. So the first key thing that you want to do is to help your clients break down the task. They have to break down the task and to set smaller goals. Lots and lots of small goals are way more likely to be accomplished than big end goals. I love the quote by Margaret Thatcher where she says, "Plan your work for today and every day, and then work the plan." For me, as a lifter, this was, I don't think my coach knew that it was a Margaret Thatcher quote, but he was like, plan your work and work the plan. That was on the gym wall. And so this is something that I still think about every day. If I plan my work for today and every day and I work the plan, then I can make that happen. So the next is to find a role model. This is really important for people who are trying to change. If you're trying to overcome deeply internalized ideologies about who you are and where you come from, you need to find someone else who's accomplished this so that you can begin to reduce your own brain's limitations of that. Helping people to learn to ask for feedback and help. And y'all, we know this is hard. Learning to ask for help is really, really hard, particularly for people who are struggling, right? There's a great little video. It's like a Sesame Street video called "The Power of Yet." It's a song by Janelle Monáe. So if you've got little kids, you should Google that, or just for fun, search for Janelle Monáe, "The Power of Yet." That'll be really a fun tool for you. Next is to help them make sure that they're learning from mistakes, and then and create a space that's safe for them to make mistakes and learn from them, and then to celebrate milestones, and then finally building that courage to start. I like the Lao Tzu quote here that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and this is in that packet as well. So we've made it through the tools, and I hope that you've all been able to get lots and lots of resources, documented in that packet. And so let's turn to see if we have any questions.
We do have one question, just confirming that pages 16 through 20 are for clients.
Yes. So 16 through 20, I mean, you can share the whole packet with your client. That's fine. But I re-numbered these. So in your packet, if you print it, it will say it starts with page 1, but it does start from the file, pages 16 to 20. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is your opportunity to send other questions in the chat. If you raise your hand, I can try to unmute you so you can ask directly.
So somebody said, how do you access the packet? I just dropped the link in the chat for you there as well.
Wonderful.
Okay, so Lisa asked, how do you minimize power dynamics in a courtroom as a judicial officer? That's a great question. So even the system is not set up to help create a minimized power dynamic, right? So usually the whole setting of like somebody's sitting higher, and the way that the whole setup is allowed. But a lot of this can be addressed in your tone and the words that you use by showing up in a deeply humanizing kind of way and treating people with with respect, so that we're not using language that shuts them down. We want to use language that builds other people up. So if we use language that's sort of minimizing, we're literally pushing ourselves up and pushing them down. So how are we using language that's really leveling the playing field so that they see that we're all humans, we're all equals? And this really starts in your mind, right? If you think, if not you, Lisa, I don't know you, but like if we come into a position thinking that we're better than others, that is going to manifest in our interactions and in our tone. And so a lot of this comes to positionality. It comes to understanding who we are and how we show up in a space, because that's going to affect the ways in which we engage with others. I think a lot of times for me as a leader, I think about and I reflect a lot on when I leave a situation, I ask myself, how did I show up today? Did I show up in a way that reflects my values? So just in the same way that we're trying to teach self-efficacy, we can also use that same reflective practice to build our own practice and modeling the values. Okay, so Melissa says that you all sit at a table. Yeah, so sitting at a table, making sure that not one person sitting at the head, that is the person in the position of power over that, right? And so you're trying to level that playing field as much as you can. Also recognizing that you still, in many cases, do wield power over these people. And so it will take an extra amount of effort for you to reduce the experience, how that person experiences those power dynamics. And you can't always control what they think and feel because they're coming from their own lived experiences and internalized ideologies around power structures. And also functioning in a system that has probably deeply affected them and oppressed them in ways that sometimes many of us can't understand. So what else? What other questions are coming up for you all? Yeah, so they're in your packet. So if you go to page 12 in your packet, let me share my screen again. Page 12 in your packet has those, there's 6, I guess I miscounted. There's 6 there. So break down the task, find a role model. And this worksheet is a form, so you can type within these as well. Break down the task, find a role model, ask for feedback and help, learn from mistakes, celebrate milestones, and build that courage to start. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, I was. I couldn't find it though when I was going scrolling through.
It's okay. It's a big packet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love this. It's great. Thank you so much.
Good. So there was a question up earlier that I missed. Somebody asked about prompting. So can I give an example of prompting? I think I saw that. Maybe I lost it. So an example of prompting is giving people space to say, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think are your next steps? So you've done these things, and making sure that they're drawing from their own brain, their own experiences to come up with something. And so if there's an incident of something that's happened, ask them, well, what do you think happened? What went wrong, right? What went right? So instead of just saying, well, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have been in this place, you shouldn't have done this thing, instead of giving them your thoughts and answers that could come with a tone of judgment, how do you switch that so that they're prompted to respond, again, building on their own experiences and thoughts? So I can go ahead and final thoughts. If more questions come up, then you can share those with me. In summary, what we aim to accomplish today is to recognize that motivation is that first step in learning, and that self-efficacy is that root of motivation, and it predicts outcomes. And by using sticky feedback, we can cultivate self-efficacy in others. And so hopefully that you're leaving today with some skills and with some tools to be able to do that. I always encourage people to reflect before they go. Okay, so someone says how to use pages 19 and 20. So pages 19 and 20, what my goal for you there is to document how you all as a team are using this resource. So again, this is just a tool that you can use. You can recreate this in whatever system makes the most sense. But the idea is that for all of you as a problem solving team, that you're all referring back to this tool that the client is completing. So when and you can build on, so say for example a client, I'm trying to draw back to some of your examples that you gave earlier. So if a judicial officer says, you know, hey, I am giving you feedback that I noticed that you know, did all of these UAs, and I see that you worked hard and it's really difficult. Maybe you make a note of that on this packet. And then the next, you know, problem solving court member comes along and sees, hey, this is what this person gave feedback on. I'm going to build on that. And so again, maybe you all are meeting together, you're trying to document these things. But again, this is a tool so that these individuals could begin to build their own confidence. Now, if they read through this, and what I've encouraged in the instructions is that they read through this every day to begin to motivate and remind themselves that they can accomplish tasks, that there are people who believe in them, that there are people that they can look up to and model, and that even though they're experiencing these physiological and emotional cues, it doesn't mean they can't do a task. So somebody asked, how do I create time? I don't know how to create time yet. I am really interested to learn how to create time. So I think that the exercise I would encourage for you to do is to provide this resource to your client and allow them in a scaffolded kind of way, if you have time, to help work somebody from the team to help work them through that. But really, this is a tool for them to do on their own, but they bring it back to your conversations, and it allows you to use this as some anchor points to use for how you're giving feedback to them. Is there a version of the packet that may be saved for printing later? You should just be able to print directly from the website. I'm not going to remove it from my website, so you can just print it however many versions that you want. Another question is, could I please put the key points slide back up? I really want to give you a chance to think about what you've learned today. In your packet on page I think 15, there is an awareness to action worksheet. It gives you some space to just take some notes and think about what's something that you learned, what do you want to do differently, because awareness is never enough. We got to take some action and create some change. And so I encourage you to do this reflection before you shift gears in your day today. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for coming. I value feedback. And so you can go to my website on engineerinclusion.com/thanks, and you can evaluate the session. Certainly you can give Leah feedback, and I'm sure she has her own system as well. But again, if you go to engineerinclusion.com/thanks, I really welcome your feedback. And I know that, again, I know we're out of time, but connecting back to what Judge Boyd says is that, you know, one person can make a difference in someone's life. You know, one person can make a difference in changing an entire family's trajectory. And I know that your jobs are so hard, and that you also often face burnout and just a lack of hope. But what I hope that you take away from this talk is that there are tools that allow us to provide some hope, and that there are strategies that allow us to systematize the ways in which we give feedback that support the outcomes for the clients and the people that we serve. I will also drop my email in the chat. You can always contact me through my website, engineerinclusion.com/thanks. So there's the feedback, and then my email is mp@engineerinclusion.com. Oops, that's not right. I typed it wrong. mp@engineerinclusion.com. There you go, not con.com. So again, and thank you so much for your time and your energy today. I'm grateful for you, and I hope to connect with you again in the future. Leah, back to you.